And I think the real future will be, home care and hospitals at home. So you won't have to go even to see a doctor or to go to a hospital in order to get care.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. This one is all about digital healthcare. Meet Noam Gabison, Vertical Manager of Digital Health at Facebook. Noam Gabison is the Vertical Manager for Digital Health at Facebook, an ex-Microsoft Venture Capital Fund, Singularity Team, and Startups Executive. He is passionate about marketing, growth, business development, and purpose-driven companies. Noam Gabison, thank you so much for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. How are you, all the way from Tel Aviv?
I'm good. Thank you, Michael. Good to see you.
It's great to see you. I have a feeling that we're just a few blocks away from each other, and unfortunately we can't do this in person. But that is exactly what we're going to talk about. The different world that we're living in, the different transformations that, have been happening the past decade, accelerated by COVID, because you are the vertical lead for digital health at Facebook. And what I think is going to be spectacular is talking about first your journey all the way from Microsoft to amazing startups like Mobily, to being in a VC fund and Singularity Team, now to doing the amazing work you're doing with startups and businesses at Facebook. So I'm going to stop talking now, and it is your turn. Noam, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me a little bit about the journey that you're on.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a journey. You know what? I'm going to start from high school. I think that's something a bit bizarre about myself. So
usually we go to kindergarten, but we can start from high school if you want.
I was born in Atlit, so I don't know if the kindergarten over there is so known. But I studied art in a high school called Tal Mayalin. So it's a very famous art kind of high school. I studied theater over there. Afterwards, I went to the military and was in a combat unit. And from that, actually, about more than 10 years ago, I started my first role in Microsoft. Afterwards, worked in a tiny startups and really got passionate into it. Over there at Microsoft, I was mainly dealing with like advanced marketing tactics. Online sales was kind of something that it was really unique. So I had the privilege of working with like really the best brands like Xbox and Microsoft, Office, Windows, and even some that today sounds really familiar, like Azure, which is cloud computing for Microsoft. But back then, it was prior even to the era of Satya Nadella. It was
a decade ago.
More than a decade ago. Yeah, I'm that old. So that was Microsoft. And back then, working with Azure, so I started to learn really about the tech scene in Israel and met a lot of startups and worked with them through Microsoft Ventures and Microsoft Accelerators. And then I decided to shift and went into VC, the VC of Singularity. Chairman was Moshe Hogeg, and also worked in some of his startups. So I'm not going to talk about that a lot today, although I'm sure that a lot of the listeners are quite curious. But I can say that it was a roller coaster, literally a roller coaster, doing amazing stuff, and then also failing a lot. So failure is quite of a big chunk of what I've done in my career. And from that, I moved to Facebook, which again, I think Facebook is such a unique company. There is this trend talking about responsibility in tech, and I think there isn't a company similar to Facebook that truly understand what is like how to be responsible for what we're doing and trying to do better in the world, trying to connect people from all around the world, and then really zoom in maybe on what Facebook Israel is doing. So I think the office in Israel is basically compiled out of two activities. One is the R&D. One of the biggest R&D outside of Menlo Park sits over here in Tel Aviv in Sarona office. And over there we have some of the most, I would say, cool and ambitious projects of Facebook. So we've got Novi, and we've got the entire Express Wi-Fi and FB Live, and even a team for AR and VR for Facebook. So that's like the R&D of Facebook in Israel. And then we also have the business sector sitting in Rothschild, which I'm literally like living 2 minutes from the office, the far close but far office. And over there, basically what we're doing is we're supporting the entire Israeli ecosystem. So we're like the API for everything Facebook. But the main attention, and I think what we're really famous about within the company, is working with hyper growth companies. So startups from different fields, from the classic e-commerce to fintech, where we have trading and insurtech companies. So Lemonade, for example, and other really famous IPOs this year. Also working with B2B. So yeah, there is a B2B on Facebook, and we're doing marketing for B2B, specifically B2SMB and SaaS companies. We've got entertainment and media, consumer tech, which is a lot of utility apps. We have marketplaces and aggregators with companies like Fiverr, for example. And then we have digital health, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But I think what we give to our clients is like top-notch consulting in three main pillars, I would say. So obviously marketing, everything related to marketing. So from the tone of voice to the messaging to the tracking and attribution, and afterwards how you scale it and getting to consumers all around the world and really doing it in a quite of effective way. So that's number one. Number two is everything related to business and strategy, trying to literally leverage the powerhouse of data, which is Facebook, both data on consumers and on companies, to help our business associate to make smarter decisions. And the last one is everything related to product and tech, which is at the core of like the tech scene in Israel. So trying to help our partners with their product and trying to integrate really advanced and smart integration to Facebook technologies. So I think that's what we're doing. On top of that, we're also engaging with NGOs in Israel, with communities, with VCs, by the way, which is something really unique because we understand that our partners are startups, and therefore we also need to be engaged with who sits in their board, which is the investors in the field. So we also build like this very special value exchange with VCs. So I think that's what we're doing at Facebook. And now, tell me how much you wanted me to go deep into digital health at Facebook or digital health in Israel.
Well, I think what you said before is a perfect segue to what we're going to talk about, because you mentioned the word responsibility, and you mentioned the word that you can't really think of many other companies like Facebook that are taking as much responsibility and thinking responsibly about the things that they have to do. And I think that what you're talking about here really is this idea that you are shifting consumer behaviors all the time. This is literally working in a company that is moving the needle, whether it be in AR and VR, or whether that may be in digital health. And by understanding that you're taking this responsibility to shift consumer behavior and think critically about what that means and how do you actually act upon that in a responsible manner, I think that is the most exciting thing that I'm waiting to hear from you, because what I'm excited to really understand here is, from the digital health perspective, what does digital health look like in the last decade or so? What's been happening with COVID? What is your part in it, and what can we get excited about this integration? And I know that this is a topic that you usually talk about for just 2 or 3 minutes, so we have 10 minutes left, so we can talk about everything, right?
Yeah. Okay. So talking about COVID, by the way, is quite of a difficult task, with all the different variations and stuff like that. Maybe there will be a variation out of this conversation, but want to talk for a second about, like you mentioned, the shift in consumer trends. So I'm not thinking that Facebook is literally making that shift. I think that Facebook is a platform that is giving people the power to make specific changes, or to build, in our specific example, to build communities and really trying to bring the world closer together. And I think with that comes that responsibility I was talking about, to play a key role in creating a much more safer and inclusive and engaged kind of healthier community. And from that, we're obviously trying to improve healthier health outcome for people around the world. But talking for a second maybe about Facebook, like health on Facebook. So I think that Facebook have, kind of a very unique opportunity to play a role with that health landscape. I know that we're not fully invested within it, like, for example, Microsoft or Apple or Google, and we're still basically collaborating today with NGOs, with health organizations, and with researchers. But I think that we're doing it from a really unique place that is playing on our strength, on Facebook's strength. I think that we're doing it through communities. We're doing it through connectivity. So connecting people to information and driving action, which is informed by better information. And then in the end, I think that we're doing it through a quite of an amazing product. I just published about it in my LinkedIn. I think it was yesterday night, like the annual review of Data for Good. So Data for Good is a project where Facebook basically gives some of our data in obviously super private and hashed way to researchers and health organizations to try and combat the COVID in 2020 and trying to find disease map prevention in different areas. And I think over there you can really find how we can enable people and help them improve, health outcomes and friends and family well-being around the world. So I think that's really, on a nutshell, what Facebook is doing in the area of health. And now I would even go and say maybe something about an area which is really passion for me, which is health in the Israeli tech scene. So I think like we build the tech scene around really deep tech. And I think that today we understand and we're stealing with pride from some of the improvements and the disruption that we brought to other verticals into the healthcare area. So we know that the healthcare system in the US, which is the main target audience for Israeli startups, is fragmented, is not effective, and is very much expensive. And
you as someone that
lived, and you as someone that lived over there, I would probably even I'm going to put words in your mouth and saying that it's not optimizing for better care or for patient engagement. And the reason why I'm saying people and not patient is I think that today pure digital health companies, so companies that were born in this era of the last 5 to 10 years, and specifically companies that was born in COVID, that are not thinking only about the payers or the providers, but are thinking about the patient, and they're thinking about the patient in a much more holistic way. They're trying to capture the human being around the symptom or around the reimbursement code, and they're trying to literally build a product that will A, provide better care, B, will connect all the dots of incentives and payments and financial aspects of healthcare in the US, and C, will try to understand that healthier living today is not a matter of being ill or being healthy. Like literally no one is healthy anymore. Like I think we all went through a year where we realized that you can have a virus, quite a nasty virus inside of you, and you don't know about it. So I think that's one of the big shifts that was happening. And I think that a lot of Israeli companies are taking some of the learnings from gaming industry, from insurtech, from fintech companies, from e-commerce. We're talking about like better delivery of care and literally bringing it into the healthcare as a sector.
Amazing. So now looking at this as an ecosystem, and you're obviously, sitting in a role where you get to see the integration and cooperation and collaboration between a lot of these organizations. And what I'm curious about as a bystander is I'm seeing a bunch of each companies tackling a different part of the puzzle, right? So if we're looking at digital health as a puzzle, then every company is doing this different piece. So one thing that I keep thinking about is saying, the problem that we're starting out with is that it's so fragmented and there's so little collaboration and cooperation. Then what does the future hold? So now that we have, disruptors coming in and changing the system, what can and should be done to make sure that things work together much more tightly and neatly, and so that there is a win-win situation and it's not like a winner-take-all or a zero-sum game again?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to think for just like another 2 seconds. Okay. So
I love that.
I think trying to map for a second the opportunities. So what we do know is we have some kind of industry consolidation right now. So we're seeing like really mega deals, digital health IPOs, and we understand that there is a lot of hype, capital, and trying to build like much more of a holistic offerings in the digital health space. So it's coming from between wellness into health tech, which is a much more regulated place. So I think that's one trend. I think the second trend is we saw like the hype of remote care and telemedicine, but we realize today in a place in a time in place in time where we can visualize post-COVID world. In Israel, maybe it's even shorter than what our colleagues in the US can visualize. But we understand that telemedicine was only the beginning, and in a way,
Right.
it's not the full disruption. Like the full disruption will be when we're gonna have like full care flow and processes that are fully digital and real-time data playing a big role in how to monitor, ensure better care, ensure the engagement that we talked about. And I think the real future will be, home care and hospitals at home. So you won't have to go even to see a doctor or to go to a hospital in order to get care. So I think that's like another area. The major one in terms of like, any disruption is coming usually from availability of information. So we see a lot of data pouring into a specific area. And from a different perspective, we're seeing affordable services. So you need, in order to disruption to really erupt, you need to have like the financial aspect getting taken care of. And right now we're seeing a lot of innovation in how to manage that, from price transparency to better delivery of care. So I think that's an area. And last but not least, I think that in a post-COVID world, what we're going to see is a shift in the data and privacy sentiment. And I think that we're seeing today much more business model innovation. So direct to consumer or delivery alternatives. We're seeing different payments methods and models. We're seeing even, national retailers like Walmart that are getting into the health space. So we're literally seeing a place where everyone is trying like to get a hold on this patient journey, which is today really complicated and doesn't start when you have some kind of a disease. It starts from the day you're born. So that was quite of a big announcement in the end, but I'm sure you get it.
Right, but no. One other thing that I'm always curious about is, and I love talking about people's journeys, and I love the fact that we're starting out all the way from your high school days and towards the different things that you've gone through, all the way to now being a game changer in the Israeli ecosystem as a part of Facebook. And one thing that I'm deeply curious about is your focus, your deep and dedicated focus, moving from a world of marketing to a world of venture capital, working previously with a bunch of startups with Mobley. And then you decide, okay, I'm going to go into health tech. What was it? Why health tech? What happened, in 2016 when you're saying this is my focus? Because that is a pretty dramatic shift in your own journey.
Okay, you're getting into sensitive parts over here, but it's okay. I got an injury in my army. I have like some kind of medical background. That's why I also got my second vaccine about a few days ago. And I think that I was doing this business and entrepreneurship journey with myself and learning a lot, really. So, for example, Microsoft is like a business school for business in the real world, and then the VC and the startups taught me a lot about how to fail right and how to learn from failures. And I think when I got to Facebook, I learned that like you can have a purpose and you can do the work that you love and still drive enormous amount of impact while doing so. And I think that today what I'm trying to do, working with VCs and working with startups, is to really build this strategic relationship coming out of mutual interest, which are impactful interest, and with the trendsetters of the Israeli ecosystem, and trying to create more D2C startups in that field, in the digital health field, that Facebook, I hope, play a small, hopefully maybe big, as we move along part in their success, and that will literally drive a change in the world for people. So I think that is my like humble contribution, I would say, to remember like Noam as a soldier and the stuff that I was dealing back then.
Wow, I love that. Noam, what is the one thing you're most excited about, looking forward into the digital health tech space? Obviously, it's a big unknown, and there's a lot of exciting paths where it could go. But what is really most exciting for you when you think about, the world that your kids and my kids are going to grow up
in? So I think it's going to be the immediate and customization of healthcare throughout the stages of life. So I think today we're still have some kind of deviation between the different stages in life and how we look at our well-being or health, or even how we look at death in some point. And I think that in the
Right.
future, with the right technology and also with the right, obviously, again, responsibility, ownership over data, and consumerization of all that stuff. So I think my kids, and I have a fresh nine months baby born gone. I think he will have just better care, not just physically, just also like
Right.
emotionally, and you name it, holistically, I would say.
100%. I think that that's exactly right. I think that we're going to see some incredible things when it comes to prosthetics and and obviously cancer research and ALS and a lot of those things that today are just impossible or seem impossible. We're going to see them resolved, but I think that what we're going to be really seeing is this tale of the average experience, the average healthcare experience, whether it's mental health, physical health, emotional well-being. That is going to have such a higher standard because today a lot of the times we take it for granted where we are, that we have access to a doctor. We can go and get the vaccine, or we can go, to visit our clinician. There's billions of people that don't even have that. And I'm thinking about, my friends and counterparts in Africa and India and China that just don't have that access. And I'm so incredibly excited for the accessibility and availability to be disseminated, and knowing that, my children and your children and the next generation, the gap will be reduced a little bit. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I love that. Noam, toda rabba rabba. Thank you so much for coming here and for spending your time with me.
Yeah,
The
it was
last
my
question that
pleasure.
I have is it's the most important question. 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Okay. Patient, honest, and probably creativity.
I love that. Noam, toda rabba. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you,
And I
Michal.
look forward to grabbing
Toda
that
rabba.
beer. I'm looking forward to grabbing that beer in person.
I'm not drinking beer in the last 6 months, so it will probably either a good whiskey or something else. But yeah, for sure.
I'll go for the first one.